Hi. So today we're going to look at two sites which provide primary source analysis tools to help students understand primary sources. So let's scroll down. So here I have the Library of Congress's Teacher's Guide and Analysis Tool for Primary Sources. The one below it is the National Archive Document Analysis Worksheets. So let's click on these two and see what they contain. So in the Library of Congress Teacher's Guide and Analysis Tool, you can see that their analysis and there's separate categories for understanding primary sources. So here we have one that says Teacher's Guide Analyzing Book and Other Printed Texts. We have one here that says Teacher's Guide and Analyzing Political Cartoons. We even have ones for analyzing motion pictures and analyzing sound recordings. But let's scroll back up and let's look at the first one of these categories of teacher's guides, which is Teacher's Guide Analyzing Primary Sources. We click on this and we see that the primary source guide is split into three distinct categories, which is observe, reflect, and question. So here under the observe category, the instructions are to have students identify and note details. So here questions can be asked: what do you notice first? What did you notice that you didn't expect? What do you notice now that you didn't notice earlier? In the reflect period, students are encouraged to generate and test hypotheses about the source. So questions like, where do you think this came from? Who do you think was the audience for this item? If someone made this today, what would be different? And what can you learn from examining this? All go under the reflection period. And then we move on to the question category. So have students ask questions to lead to more observations and reflections. So what to do, what do you wonder about? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then here we have this category known as further investigation. So it helps students to identify questions appropriate for further investigation and to develop a research strategy for finding answers. But going back, let's look at some more of these categories. Let's look at some more of these categories of teacher's guides. Let's look at something a little bit different. So let's look at Teacher's Guide Analyzing Sheet Music and Song Sheets. So here we see again that the teacher's guide is split into three different categories, which is the observe, reflect, and question. But the questions within the observe and reflect are somewhat different. So here we have, for observe, describe what you see on the cover. What names or places appear in the lyrics? If you know the melody, sing or hum it. What do you notice about how it sounds? So all under the observe category, but questions distinct to music and song sheets. In the reflect period, again, these questions are focused on music and song sheets, such as what was the purpose of this music? What does the cover tell you about the music? If you know the melody, how does it add to your understanding? If someone created this today, what would be different? So again, these teacher guides are helpful in helping teachers to develop very specific kinds of questions in helping students understand primary sources of any type. So it could be sheet music, could be manuscripts, could be political cartoons, could be printed books and texts. So let's scroll up to what the students will see when trying to analyze primary sources using this tool. So here, it's very simple. Again, it's observe, reflect, and question, the same categories. So from using the teacher's guide, the teacher will probably have to do a lot of scaffolding and a lot of modeling to have these students understand how to use this primary source analysis tool. So here, I put an observation, I see a duck, right? And then I reflect, I think the duck makes people happy. And then the question is, why does the duck look sad? Again, these are very simple, but it's sort of the way you want to develop their thinking. And this primary source analysis tool is, I think, very good in the sense that it provides gradual steps in having students understand how to analyze primary sources. All right, so let's move on to the second primary source analysis tool. So here we have one that's brought by the National Archives, and it's a document analysis worksheets. So these are worksheets that again can provide support for students in understanding how to analyze primary sources. So let's look at one that's probably going to be the most common, and which is a written document. So let's click on this link to this PDF. So what you notice is that this is a little different, because here, as I scroll down, the questions are much more specific. And so let's take number 1, for example. Students are asked what type of document the document that they're analyzing is. So could it be a newspaper? Is it a report? Is it a congressional record? Who knows? The students are having to look beyond just the context or the content within the document and looking at the document as a whole. So again, we have unique physical characteristics of the document. Was it handwritten? Did it receive this received stamp? Notations? So they're investigating what the document has been going through and what the document could mean. And then we go into these later questions, which have been the sort of basic skills in which students have come to analyze written work. So dates of the document, the author of the document, the position of the title. But then here around 5 and 6, the last questions of the worksheet, we have students, again, digging into a different skill set, and they're looking at for what audience was the document written. And now you can hear, I think, is a good opportunity to have teachers say, dig deeper in just being like, oh, was it written for just women? Was it just written for men? You can have them think of multiple categories melding into one. Was it written for middle-aged women in the 1950s? Was it written for African Americans in the 1960s in the south of Louisiana? So having students dig deeper with these sort of broader questions. And then here, document information. Now, the questions are much more specific and explicit in what they want. So here we have a question that says, list 3 things the author said that you think are important. We here have list 2 things the document tells you about life in the United States at the time it was written. And then it has to ask you to write a question to the author that is left unanswered by the document. Oh, also here on C, what evidence in the document helps you know why it was written? And then you have to provide a quote from the document. So here this worksheet is providing a lot more support in its own text of how students should be addressing primary source documents. Now, looking at these two, I do acknowledge that some of these worksheets and tools may be very simple, and because they're simple, there are some gaps in which they could have areas of improvement. I know that looking at these, I wish there was more contextualization, and I wish there was more sourcing questions, and definitely I don't see really any corroborating questions. There's no real opportunity for students to have multiple documents and bring them together to corroborate sort of the factual nature of an event or anything like that. But with that being said, it is important to mention that if you want your students to start developing the analytical skill set you need them to have in understanding primary sources, think these tools are a good place to start. You may not use the worksheets per se, but the questions they provide and the tools and the questions that they may provide are a good start for many of the students who really have not had the training and understanding to look at primary sources in a critical way. So I hope this video was helpful, and if hopefully you'll use these tools, but if not, at least maybe use them as a reference for your own class and help the students understand primary sources.